Have you ever noticed that some of the people who seem to understand others the best are often the hardest to find online? They aren't posting every thought. They aren't documenting every meal. They aren't broadcasting every emotional experience to an audience. In some cases, they barely post at all. And when they do, the content reveals almost nothing about who they really are. At first glance, this seems strange. We're living in a time when visibility is treated like value. The more people know about you, the more successful you're assumed to be. The more attention you receive, the more important you appear. Social media has created an environment where self-disclosure is rewarded. People reveal personal struggles and receive validation. People share achievements and receive approval. People post opinions and receive engagement. Over time, the brain begins associating exposure with reward. Yet there is a group of individuals who consistently resist this pattern. Whether you call them empaths, highly sensitive observers, emotionally intelligent individuals, or simply people with exceptional social awareness, they often share one characteristic: they reveal far less than expected. This doesn't mean they're hiding. It doesn't mean they're antisocial. It doesn't mean they're afraid. In many cases, it means they understand something about human behavior that most people overlook. One of the first things highly perceptive people learn is that information has value. Every piece of information you reveal changes how other people interact with you. The moment someone knows your fears, they begin filtering you through those fears. The moment someone knows your insecurities, they begin responding to those insecurities. The moment someone knows your emotional triggers, they possess influence they didn't previously have. Most people think influence comes from speaking. Experienced observers know influence often comes from listening. When you enter a conversation and reveal very little, something interesting happens. The other person begins filling the silence. They begin volunteering information. They begin revealing motivations. They begin exposing priorities. They begin showing you who they really are. Humans have an almost irresistible desire to reduce uncertainty. When they don't know much about you, they unconsciously attempt to discover more. This often causes them to talk. A lot. Highly perceptive individuals notice this phenomenon early. They realize that every time they speak less, they learn more. Every time they reveal less, they observe more. Every time they step back, other people step forward. Social media reverses this process. Instead of observing, you're presenting. Instead of gathering information, you're distributing it. Instead of learning, you're revealing. For many deeply perceptive people, this feels unnatural. They instinctively understand that excessive self-disclosure reduces their ability to see people clearly. Think about a mirror. A mirror reflects. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't explain itself. It simply provides information. Many emotionally intelligent observers operate similarly. When others interact with them, they often feel understood. They feel heard. They feel seen. But afterward, they realize something unusual. They learned very little about the observer. This isn't manipulation. It's a consequence of attention. Most people focus attention outward only briefly. Then attention returns to themselves. Observers maintain attention outward much longer. Because of this, they gather information that others miss. They notice inconsistencies. They notice emotional shifts. They notice subtle changes in language. They notice discomfort hidden beneath confidence. They notice confidence hidden beneath insecurity. Over time, this creates a different relationship with visibility. While many people seek attention, observers often seek clarity. And clarity requires observation. Observation requires distance. Distance requires boundaries. One reason many empaths avoid excessive social media exposure is because they understand emotional contamination. Most people underestimate how strongly emotions spread. Psychologists sometimes refer to this as emotional contagion. One person's emotional state influences another person's emotional state. You don't need to speak for this to happen. You don't even need physical proximity. Digital environments transmit emotional signals constantly. Fear spreads. Anger spreads. Anxiety spreads. Outrage spreads. Envy spreads. Social comparison spreads. When a highly sensitive observer scrolls through hundreds of emotionally charged posts, they're not simply consuming content, they're processing emotional information, and often they're processing much more of it than the average person realizes. Imagine walking into a room where 50 people are talking simultaneously. One person is angry. One person is grieving. One person is jealous. One person is celebrating. One person is afraid. One person is desperate for validation. Most people naturally filter much of this out. Highly sensitive observers often don't. They pick up more signals. More signals means more processing. More processing means more mental load. Eventually, many of these individuals realize something important. Not every emotional signal deserves access to their attention. So they create distance. Not because they dislike people. Not because they're disconnected. But because their nervous system requires selectivity. Another misunderstood reason involves identity. People who spend years studying human behavior often become cautious about creating public personas. A persona is useful. It helps people categorize you. It helps people understand where you fit. But personas create expectations. And expectations create pressure. The moment thousands of people believe they know who you are, maintaining that image becomes work. Some individuals find this exhausting. They prefer authenticity over performance. The problem is that social media often rewards performance. The algorithm doesn't necessarily reward depth. It rewards engagement. It rewards attention. It rewards emotional intensity. As a result, many people gradually become exaggerated versions of themselves. The funny person becomes funnier. The angry person becomes angrier. The confident person becomes more extreme. The victim becomes more victimized. The expert becomes more certain. Over time, identity hardens. The performance becomes difficult to escape. Highly self-aware observers often see this process happening, and they want no part of it. They'd rather remain complex than become predictable. They'd rather remain authentic than become a character. They'd rather be understood by a few people deeply than by millions superficially. Another pattern emerges when you study individuals with strong empathic tendencies. Many have experienced betrayal, not necessarily dramatic betrayal. Sometimes it's subtle. A confidence shared in trust. A vulnerability used as leverage. A weakness exposed publicly. An insecurity exploited. These experiences teach a powerful lesson. Visibility creates opportunity. Not only for connection, but also for exploitation. The more publicly available information exists about you, the easier it becomes for others to predict you, influence you, manipulate you, judge you, categorize you. This doesn't mean all attention is dangerous. It means attention has consequences. People with strong social awareness understand those consequences earlier than most. They recognize that privacy is not secrecy. Privacy is protection. Privacy is ownership. Privacy is choosing who receives access to different parts of your life. What makes this even more interesting is that many people misinterpret silence. They assume silence means insecurity. They assume privacy means fear. They assume low visibility means low confidence. Behaviorally speaking, that's often incorrect. In fact, some of the most confident people you will ever meet have very little need to constantly announce themselves. Confidence and visibility are not the same thing. A person who knows exactly who they are does not require continuous confirmation from strangers. A person who feels secure internally doesn't always need external evidence of that security. This creates a fascinating contrast online. Many individuals are broadcasting constantly because broadcasting itself has become part of emotional regulation. The notification becomes reassurance. The comment becomes validation. The reaction becomes proof. The share becomes significance. Remove those things and discomfort appears. Suddenly a question emerges. Who am I when nobody is watching? That's a difficult question. Much more difficult than most people realize. Because modern platforms have blurred the line between identity and attention. For some people, attention has become part of identity. The observer notices this. The empath notices this. The highly perceptive individual notices this. And because they notice it, they often become cautious. They don't want their sense of self attached to metrics. They don't want their mood determined by engagement. They don't want their confidence outsourced to an audience. So they maintain separation. Not complete separation, just enough to remain psychologically independent. There's another behavioral principle worth understanding. The more information people have about you, the more assumptions they make. Most people think additional information creates understanding. In reality, additional information often creates stories, and stories are not always accurate. Imagine posting a photograph. Within seconds, hundreds of people begin interpreting it. Some see confidence. Some see arrogance. Some see happiness. Some see loneliness. Some see success. Some see insecurity. The image hasn't changed. Only the interpretations have. Highly observant individuals become aware of this phenomenon. They realize they have very little control over the stories people create. Once information leaves their possession, meaning becomes negotiable. People assign motives. People assign intentions. People assign emotions. People assign identities. And much of it has nothing to do with reality. This realization often decreases the desire for constant exposure. Why spend enormous energy controlling perception when perception is largely uncontrollable? Many empaths eventually conclude that the effort isn't worth it. They'd rather invest energy in real relationships. They'd rather invest energy in meaningful conversations. They'd rather invest energy in actual experiences. Because experiences create substance. Attention creates appearance. And substance lasts longer. One of the most overlooked traits among highly perceptive people is their relationship with energy. Not energy in a mystical sense. Energy in a psychological sense. Attention is energy. Focus is energy. Emotional processing is energy. Decision-making is energy. Interaction is energy. Every social encounter carries a cost. Sometimes that cost is tiny. Sometimes it's substantial. People who are exceptionally aware of emotional signals often experience higher interaction costs than average. They're processing tone. They're processing facial expressions. They're processing inconsistencies. They're processing emotional states. They're processing intentions. They're processing context. All of this occurs simultaneously. Most of it happens automatically. The result is that large-scale digital interaction can become surprisingly exhausting. A person may spend an hour scrolling and feel mentally depleted without understanding why. From the outside, it appears effortless. From the inside, hundreds of micro-assessments have occurred. Thousands of emotional cues have been processed. Countless comparisons have been evaluated. The brain has been working continuously. This helps explain why some of the most socially aware individuals disappear periodically. They don't disappear because they hate people. They disappear because restoration requires space. They disappear because constant exposure prevents reflection. They disappear because clarity often emerges in silence. Watch what happens when someone spends enough time alone. The noise begins to fade. The opinions begin to fade. The expectations begin to fade. And eventually their own thoughts become audible again. That's valuable. Extremely valuable. Unfortunately, it's becoming increasingly rare. Many people move from stimulation to stimulation without pause. Notification, video, comment, message, article, opinion, argument, reaction, repeat. The observer recognizes a danger here. If your attention is constantly occupied, someone else is deciding what you think about. Someone else is deciding what deserves your emotional response. Someone else is deciding what enters your mental environment. Highly aware individuals tend to guard against this. They become selective, not because they're antisocial, because they're intentional. Intentional people understand that attention is one of the most valuable resources they possess. Once attention is spent, it cannot be recovered. You can earn more money. You can acquire more possessions. You can rebuild many things. You cannot recover yesterday's attention. It's gone. The most perceptive people understand this instinctively. That's why many of them seem difficult to reach. That's why many of them seem less active online. That's why many of them appear disconnected from trends. They're protecting the asset that matters most. Their awareness. Another reason empaths often avoid showing themselves extensively online involves prediction. The average person reveals predictable patterns, predictable emotional triggers, predictable beliefs, predictable reactions, predictable vulnerabilities. The more content someone creates, the easier those patterns become to identify. Behavioral analysts understand this very well. If I observe enough of your behavior, I can begin predicting future behavior. Maybe not perfectly, but with increasing accuracy. Every post contributes data. Every comment contributes data. Every argument contributes data. Every photograph contributes data. Patterns emerge. Humans are remarkably consistent. Most people don't realize how much they reveal. Their language reveals priorities. Their timing reveals habits. Their reactions reveal insecurities. Their interests reveal motivations. Their complaints reveal frustrations. Their celebrations reveal desires. Everything contributes. Highly perceptive individuals become aware of this process. As a result, they often reveal less. Not because they're paranoid, because they're informed. They understand that information creates leverage, and they prefer deciding who receives that leverage. There's also a deeper emotional reason. Many empaths derive fulfillment differently than highly attention-oriented personalities. For some people, visibility itself is rewarding. For others, connection is rewarding. Those aren't the same thing. Visibility can occur without connection. Connection can occur without visibility. An empath often values the second one more. A 2-hour conversation with someone authentic may provide more satisfaction than 10,000 online interactions. A meaningful relationship may matter more than public recognition. A private moment may matter more than public applause. This creates a very different motivational structure. If attention isn't the goal, many social media behaviors stop making sense. Why compete for visibility? Why manufacture controversy? Why exaggerate experiences? Why constantly self-promote? The incentives disappear. And when the incentives disappear, behavior changes. This is why some of the deepest thinkers you know have surprisingly small online footprints. It's not because they have nothing to say. It's because they don't feel compelled to say everything. Restraint is another characteristic people often misunderstand. Modern culture frequently equates expression with authenticity. But expression and authenticity are not identical. You can express constantly while being completely disconnected from yourself. You can express very little while remaining deeply authentic. Authenticity is not measured by volume. It's measured by alignment. Are your actions aligned with your values? Are your words aligned with your beliefs? Are your decisions aligned with your priorities? That's authenticity. Not frequency of posting, not quantity of disclosure, not visibility. Many empaths eventually recognize something important. Every part of their life does not need an audience. Every experience does not require documentation. Every emotion does not require publication. Some moments become more valuable precisely because they remain private. Think about that. Some experiences lose depth the moment they're converted into content. The focus shifts. Instead of experiencing the moment, you're capturing it. Instead of feeling the moment, you're presenting it. Instead of living the experience, you're packaging the experience. Observers notice this shift, and often they reject it. They choose presence over performance. Presence is becoming rare. Rare things become valuable. One of the strongest indicators of emotional maturity is the ability to experience something meaningful without needing immediate validation. Can you enjoy success privately? Can you process growth privately? Can you celebrate quietly? Can you heal quietly? Can you improve without announcing it? Many highly perceptive people can. Not because they lack confidence, because they possess enough confidence to proceed without applause. This leads to another misconception. People sometimes assume private individuals are secretive. Those aren't the same thing. Secrecy involves concealment. Privacy involves boundaries. Healthy boundaries are essential for psychological stability. Without boundaries, identity becomes vulnerable to external influence. Every opinion enters. Every criticism enters. Every judgment enters. Every expectation enters. Eventually, the individual loses contact with their own preferences. Their life becomes reactive. Their decisions become audience-driven. Their identity becomes externally constructed. Observers see this happen constantly. They watch people gradually become products. They watch people gradually become brands. They watch people gradually become performances. And many decide they want something different, something quieter, something more real, something that exists whether anyone sees it or not. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of all is this. The people who reveal the least are often the people who understand the most. Because understanding requires observation. Observation requires patience. Patience requires restraint. Restraint requires self-control. Self-control is increasingly rare in environments designed to encourage impulsive behavior. The empath who remains mostly unseen is often making a deliberate choice, a psychological choice, a behavioral choice, a strategic choice. They understand that mystery has value, not because mystery creates power, because mystery preserves freedom. The less the world demands a specific version of you, the more freedom you have to grow. The less you're trapped by public expectations, the more room you have to evolve. The less committed you are to a persona, the easier it becomes to remain authentic. And authenticity, despite what many people believe, doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes authenticity is quiet. Sometimes authenticity is private. Sometimes authenticity exists completely outside public view. And in a culture obsessed with visibility, that may be one of the most psychologically powerful decisions a person can make.